So to my left is Sean Applegate. He runs 10th Planet Atlanta here in Atlanta, Georgia. He is probably one of the premium upcoming no-gi coaches in the modern jiu-jitsu scene, and has been a good friend of mine and a lot of my students over the good course of 2024. So bringing him into the podcast and having a chat with him about jiu-jitsu and even his life a little bit is a pleasure. So thank you, Sean.
Yeah, man. Pumped to be here, bro.
Oh, thank you. So so I guess let's just start with your background. So how you got into jiu-jitsu and how you got here.
Yeah, man. So I got into jiu-jitsu when I was 21, just was into martial arts, like MMA. I think that's the common story, Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like a thing where it's like I saw UFC 1. I still don't think I've watched UFC 1 all the way through. Mm-hmm. So I don't have that story. But Machida was on top at the time, Mm-hmm. Like whenever I got into it, Machida was killing everybody. And I was like, dude, I want to do that. Well, he does karate, right? So I was like, all right, I'm going to do that. And so I tried to check that out. It was kind of weird, whatever. And then I went to, Decatur. And there was a karate school there, and there was a guy there. His name is Brandon McCatherine. He's running a jiu-jitsu school, but he was like a blue belt at the time, and it was a 10th Planet. And I went and I rolled with him, and he beat me up pretty bad. And I thought what he was doing to me was just a bunch of tricks. You know what I'm saying? I was like, this is really cool. I'm gonna learn how to do this, and then I'm gonna go back to the beach where I'm from, and I'm gonna just do this to all my boys, and it's gonna be sick. Not the case. It didn't matter if I knew what he was doing or not. He could still beat me up. And I was like, all right, this is fascinating. So I have to do jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean? So to take it seriously. And I looked for jiu-jitsu schools, and there weren't any. That's the problem. There's no jiu-jitsu schools in my area. There was an MMA school that my buddy, one of my childhood friends, trained at, and he was trying to get me to go. He's like, come do MMA, come do MMA. And I was like, yeah, I guess. I'll check that out. And then I found out two things right away. As soon as I showed up, I was like, first off, I don't want to do MMA. This sucks. And the second thing is jiu-jitsu was dope. It was really fun, and I was having a blast doing it. And I went to this other jiu-jitsu school in town that was like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school. They didn't have MMA and stuff. It's supposed to be Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I showed up, and they were doing gi. You know what I mean? And I knew when I did karate that there's all these different kinds of karate, you know what I'm saying? And some of them are real. So there was a school in Gulf Shores that was a bare knuckle karate, fighting school.
Oh, that sounds crazy.
And the guy that ran it was doing bare knuckle tournaments and stuff, crazy blood sport type stuff.
Yeah, like kumite.
Wild. It was wild, dude. They were super tough guys. And then there's also the karate that 6-year-olds do, you know? And I was like, okay, cool. Very different things. And so when I saw gi jiu-jitsu, I thought jiu-jitsu was the same thing. I saw these guys grabbing the gi, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is the karate that kids do. This isn't real. So I left. Right. I was like, this can't be it. Right. My experience in jiu-jitsu was at this 10th Planet school where they didn't do the gi.
Got it.
And the guy was really weird too, so I was like, well, I don't know about this.
Right.
And long story short, that guy ended up, in a very short amount of time after that, guy ended up getting arrested for some pretty wild stuff. So instincts were definitely right on that one. Yeah. So I stayed at the MMA school, which was cool, and I talked to Brandon, talked to Eddie, and I was like, I don't know what to do, man. There's no jiu-jitsu here, And Brandon was like, I don't know, man, what you want to do with that. And then Eddie was like, you should just train at the MMA school and just study jiu-jitsu super hard and share with those guys what you're studying. And if you'll just do that, then basically, that's how you'll get better, and then eventually if you're good enough, you could, maybe have your own 10th Planet school one day. Right. And Brandon had already done that. So Brandon was at that karate school, didn't have a coach, was learning jiu-jitsu from studying it, traveling around the country to go to seminars with Eddie. And Eddie had given him a blue belt and, whatever. At the time, I had let him run school. And I was like, oh, cool. Okay, so I guess I'm just going to do that. Right. So I started pursuing that path. And it's when you don't have a coach every day and you're trying to learn jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of weird stuff that, you have to work through very quickly. It's being self-critical becomes number one, right? Mm-hmm. So no longer can you just go to class and have your coach say, hey, man, do this thing. You don't do that anymore, And I was also thrust into like this coaching role, which I didn't really know anything about and didn't really feel like I should be doing. Right. And after a couple months, the MMA gym owner was like, "Hey man, would you be the jiu-jitsu coach?" And I was like, "I really shouldn't do that."
Wow.
You know, like I might be better than most of these guys because they're not really focused on jiu-jitsu and I am. Mm-hmm. But I'm not. You know, Brandon was a blue belt beating me up. I'm thinking like he's a blue belt, like black belt would be crazy. You know, there was like 3 black belts in the state at the time, so it was like not accessible to try and.
What year was this?
2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that was right at like before the new age of like instructionals being online and being much information being a lot more accessible, right?
Yeah, that was not a thing, dude.
Yeah.
Like there were books, which I cannot learn jiu-jitsu from a book, so that was not an option for me. And Eddie had put out some instructional videos, you know, like some DVDs. And so I was like, cool, give me those, you know. And I was just doing that, man. And Brandon was a fantastic, so Brandon was like, hey, if you're going to do this, then every other month I'll come down and I'll do a seminar.
Okay.
And I was like, cool. So on the months where you don't come, I'll try to come up to you if I can, you know. Mm-hmm. And I'll try to make that work. And we did that for like a year, you know. Wow. And I would compete, you know. Mm-hmm. And eventually I got my blue belt from Brandon. And I went out to LA. I went to LA as a white belt to train with Eddie, you know, for a week. And then I did Gracie Worlds as a white belt, which was an interesting experience. And then I went back as a blue belt like 3 or 4 months after I'd gotten my blue belt, and fought Gracie Worlds and submitted all my opponents. And that was the only way. Gracie Worlds is the most hardcore, in my opinion, the most hardcore tournament like there's ever been in jiu-jitsu, as far as like just we're going to make people submit each other, and we don't care like about anything else. So Gracie Worlds was 10 minutes, sub only, no submission. Both people were eliminated. Both people disqualified.
I kind of like that.
So there were entire brackets that didn't have winners because, like, yeah, everyone just drew out in the first round. So there's no one won.
I wonder how that would work today.
So to have a gold, like they did plaques, they didn't do medals.
Right.
To get a gold plaque at Gracie Worlds, you had to submit every single opponent.
That's badass.
It's the only way you could get one.
That's pretty cool.
For everyone that's got one of those, that means whoever they put in front of them, they submitted them. And they would do that all the way to the finals. And in the finals, it was no time limit submission only.
Wow.
I watched brown belt DJ Jackson and Orlando Sanchez go for like an hour and a half one time.
Oh my God.
It was a horrible match. And like they stood on their feet for the whole match. And
how much clubbing is going on?
Bro, Orlando got tired and laid down. And then DJ just ran around his legs and submitted him. And I was just like, we waited an hour and a half for this, dude. It was the worst match, bro. But I also like, dude, at Gracie Worlds was like the first time I got to go and compete alongside a lot of people that were like supposed to be really good, right? So, and there was a lot of people before they were known. So like Keenan Cornelius when he's a purple belt. Hiram Gracie, Curtis Leander, Nathan Orchard, Gio, Boogie, all the 10th Planet guys for sure. You know, Vinny Magalesh, Robert Drysdale, like just all these people you can think of, you know what I mean? So it was a big deal for me. But long story short, when I was a blue belt, I went and I won. I submitted all 3 of my guys. And Eddie came out a few months later and he was like, to my school, he did a seminar at this MMA gym. And he was like, all right, man, well, you won Gracie Worlds. You submitted all these blue belts. I guess you're ready for your purple belt. And I'm like a year and 8 months into jiu-jitsu. I'm like not ready for my purple belt, dude. I'm like, no, like I don't need this. He promotes me. And he's like, all right, man, now you'll be like a real 10th Planet affiliate. So year and 8 months in, running a 10th Planet school, purple belt, my own coach the entire time. So for sure, just absolutely full of imposter syndrome and self-doubt at that point. I'm just like, well, dude, what is this, you know? And it was just the pressure of it all that kept me going. Honestly, it was just like, all right, man, like when people come in, you got to hold it down. You got all these guys in here trying to learn from you. You got to make sure you're teaching them good stuff. Right. So you got to study. You got to compete. I've never competed ever once in my entire jiu-jitsu career. I never competed once where I wasn't the coach.
Wow.
Yeah. So every time I competed, I was the coach competing, even as a white belt. Which is like an amount of pressure that like when my white belts are like, I don't know, dude, I'm nervous. I'm like, listen, like 2 things. First of all, I was already the coach when I competed as a white belt for the first time. So imagine whatever pressure you have and then do that. I was like, and then also at Chase Hanna's first tournament, he got omoplated by a guy with 1 leg. So that's like the worst thing that can happen to you. That can't possibly happen to you. So I think you're going to be fine.
Right.
And so we just, you know, that's how we handle it. But yeah, that was my journey, dude. And then once I was like from purple belt on, dude, I just like it was just happening at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was just like I got in the routine, I got the process down, and then I just started replicating. You know?
Yeah. So it sounds like you're like one of the pioneers of self-learning.
Maybe within jiu-jitsu, I feel like within jiu-jitsu, we have the perfect landscape for everyone to be doing that, and no one was doing it for some reason. I'm not really sure why. Because at one point in jiu-jitsu, you could only learn in the States like from like 3 people or something.
Yeah, pretty much.
And people were all just trying to learn from those 3 people, which is probably the best way to do it. But also, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, studying tape and all, it's funny now because it's like really popular to like talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, let's study tape. Let's do this. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure.
I think that's if you're at a good program, you study tape all the time. It's just part of what you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Back then, it was like, what are you talking? What do you mean study? I'm going to my class.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a wild kind of thinking. Yeah, because I mean, if you're talking about 2011, that's over a decade ago. And like you said, I mean, I remember when I first started jiu-jitsu, everything was, I mean, forget about YouTube. You just had these books, and I remember like one of the first books I had was it was this like Henzo book, where like the basic fundamentals of jiu-jitsu, and it was just like a picture, and there'd be like a little blurb, and then a picture, and then the next slide, another picture. You know how hard it was to learn from that?
I mean, can't learn from books.
It was very, very difficult. And I remember asking, I was like, how do I learn from this? And they're just like, we don't know. This is just the only material we can possibly offer at this time. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I don't like Eddie had books too, you know,
Yeah.
and
I think I have one of Eddie's books somewhere, Mike, because I have so many old books. In my house.
yeah.
Yeah.
Brandon was like, you need to get Jiu-Jitsu University, right? Salo,
I have that one too. Yes.
Great book, right?
Great book.
Salo is great, but here's the thing: again, getting nothing out of it.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to have Brandon. Brandon is one of the, in my opinion, like no one talks about it because he never really put his mind into producing like good competitors, and I feel like if you don't produce good competitors, people don't really listen to you as a coach, you know?
I think that's an unfortunate thing in jiu-jitsu, actually, because there's a lot of good teachers I've met across the jiu-jitsu scene that I go, wow, like I've went to a class by them, I'm like, man, you got a lot to offer. And just because they haven't had the breakthrough success of an athlete, or just, because sometimes there's a lot of luck involved in this too, to be honest, at the highest level, you work hard, but even with all that work, there's still some, draw that has to happen. And that, there are good instructors that just never had that breakthrough, and you don't hear of them. So that could be.
Well, there's this dichotomy in jiu-jitsu between like guys who like, so in jiu-jitsu, one of the things that we feel like we circumvented was the whole snake oil thing, because we can just roll, right? So it's like people are comfortable doing jiu-jitsu because they're like, oh, it's real.
Yeah.
Like we can roll.
Correct.
It's one of the only martial arts we can practice at 100% speed and not worry about being injured all the time.
Correct.
So we have this weird dichotomy between like that and then like listening to people talk about it. And it's like, I think they're trying to like reconcile those things by saying like, oh, well then what have you done? Because if you've done something, I'll listen to you. And if you haven't done anything, then I'm not really sure if you're trying to do the snake oil thing again, or is this becoming karate? You know what I'm saying? And so that little dichotomy is something that we have to learn to navigate a little better culturally. And I think we are. I think John Danaher changed that a lot. I think John coming out and being the guy he is allowed for a lot more voices to be heard. But with that being said, this is just the culture we live in. And I think that it will grow, and there will be more coaches that didn't necessarily produce a high-level competitor. Maybe whatever, they do start to get that spotlight. But Brandon's one of those guys. Brandon's one of those guys that people don't really talk about. He's a great commentator. He runs a great facility. Like as far as like business is concerned, to the moon and back with that guy, bro.
Yeah, I think I can, definitely piggyback off that, because the guy I first started jiu-jitsu with, like, nobody. I mean, people know who he is now, but back then when I was like, people were like, oh, so who'd you learn jiu-jitsu at, like white and blue belt? I was like, this guy Brian Glick, and people know who he is today, but back then people were like, who's Brian Glick? And I was like, listen, man, the guy beat my ass all the time. The guy was really, really good. He just, no one ever heard of him because he's just, this smart guy from Colombia that just did jiu-jitsu and just, had his own little life.
Yeah.
And, like, no one knew who he was. He was just like unknown guy that just came into class, did what he had to do, beat everyone's ass, and went home. And, because he wasn't he wasn't, Gordon or Marcelo or something like nobody knew who he was. But he was fantastic. And whenever he taught me, I picked up a lot of information. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think the landscape is changing with that.
Yeah, Brian's the man, for sure. He's got great information. And But yeah, Brandon's one of those guys, dude. So Brandon right off the rip was like, jiu-jitsu's deeper than moves that you're memorizing out of these videos or whatever. I'm like, okay, sure. And like I would roll with him, and I would like try to do these rehearsed moves, and he would just like, I would get an underhook, and it just didn't feel like an underhook. I would get an overhook, it didn't feel like an overhook. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wasn't one of those guys, you know, where like you roll with a guy and like it's just like head to head. You know, they just enforce their will the whole time. It wasn't like that. Brandon would let you try whatever you want, and then nothing would work, and then he would tap you.
Yeah.
And it was just like, dude, I don't know anything. And every time I would roll with him as an underbelt, like, it felt that way.
Yeah.
And he always reinforced that there's a deeper, you know what I'm saying? And like, the depth of mastery is a thing that he reinforced to me. You know what I'm saying? And so I was like, cool, I got to find that stuff, you know? And I went down the invisible jiu-jitsu rabbit hole and all the things that you look up when you start getting to that point. And as soon as I stopped trying to collect moves, you know, and I was like, all right, because as a blue belt, I felt like every blue belt, dude. I was like, Kimura, armbar, triangle, renegade choke, guillotine. I got that. No room left to improve on those. Now we need to figure out how to backflip into those things. You know what I'm saying? Like, like we got to like learn the flashy, tricky new stuff.
Yeah.
Like, this other stuff is, you know, no one just guillotines somebody, you know?
Yeah.
And then I would watch people compete, and I'd be like, I would watch Marcelo, like, straight up just guillotine somebody. I'd be like, dude, what's going on? How are these guys getting guillotined? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I get messages like that all the time. When we were at Aiga, Ryan heel hooked this guy, and I got a message from this guy who was like, dude, why do people just watch themselves get leg locked? And I'm like, it's like the depth of mastery on that technique is like, he didn't, bro, trust me.
Yeah.
That dude,
he was no way getting out of that.
He just hasn't felt one like that and just didn't understand. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that was Marcelo. People get out of guillotines all the time, just not that guillotine. You know what I'm saying? Like, the depth of mastery on his guillotine, you know? And like, anyway, so that was like the journey. It's just like, basically, you don't have a coach, you don't have anyone to help you out every day. Study, be accountable to yourself. I tapped this dude in training, but he swept me 4 times. I lost today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like telling that to yourself when you go home, rather than going home and feeling like, dude, I've tapped everyone I trained with today. I did great, you know? Yeah,
that's a really important lesson for, I think, just jiu-jitsu in general is 2 things. First of all, accountability is very important. Whether you're a competitor or just you like jiu-jitsu, it doesn't make a difference. If you're not accountable for how you're doing, I think that's just, you're not going to get better. And the only person you lie to is yourself, to be honest. You know, like if you're taking self accountability, like, no, I did great today, and it's just like you go home and you look in the mirror and like, oh, who are you lying to? Just yourself, really. You know what I mean? But I like what you said about like stop thinking about move stuff. It makes me think of like whenever, you know, Nick can attest, whenever we're in Brandon's class at ODSY, like Brandon yells all the time. He's like, you guys got to stop looking at jiu-jitsu by moves. He's like, there's just a bunch of principles and concepts that you're just not looking at. You're not seeing the you're not seeing the forest through the trees, like he's yelling at us. He's like, I don't look at moves. I look at levers and wedges, and I look at like head positioning and inside position and where are you? Like, how can I move you? If I can't move you, I'm gonna move myself. Like, just very simple stuff. And he's like, every move you watch in jiu-jitsu, when you watch like someone teach an instructional, you could break it down to these very basic principles and concepts. They're all baked into it with just some other stuff to it. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. So that's how I started, you know, looking at jiu-jitsu a lot differently. But I think those are the kind of guys that are great because they make you think about their jiu-jitsu differently.
Yeah, Brandon did a great job with that. But, you know, over time, it was like, for Brandon's time in jiu-jitsu, so when he was like trying to become an instructor, the landscape that he had in front of him was one of memorizing moves.
Right.
And so Brandon was doing the thing that people weren't doing. Brandon was going, oh, there's concept, there's principles here. But he was also only working with like the data he had in front of him, which is not like good data, honestly, compared to what we have now.
Right.
Right. And the internet changed everything. And so like being able to listen to great jiu-jitsu coaches from all over the world talk about jiu-jitsu allows for like this mass like download of information. Right. And so now we're able to take a step back and revisit those concepts and principles and really understand them. And there's another layer to that. So the initial jiu-jitsu culture was memorize these moves. We don't even have names for them. Brazilians called everything the position. You know what I'm saying? They didn't have names.
Right.
Eddie brought systemization and nomenclature to jiu-jitsu.
He did.
The funny thing is there's an interview way back. I think when John had hair, actually. Okay. Eddie met John. And John was like, yeah, Eddie Bravo, like, it's great. The way he systemizes jiu-jitsu is awesome. And then all of a sudden it was like system, enter the system and all these systemizing things. And it's like, yes, that was exactly what should have happened.
Yeah.
Systemize your jiu-jitsu, give it names, use nomenclature. That's what everyone does. Wrestling, every club has nomenclature for a reason.
Correct.
It's not to trick the opponents, you know what I mean? It's way more for the benefit of the athletes in the program than it is to trick people, you know?
That's correct.
We may change the name to trick people, but we still need the name. That's the idea, right?
Yeah.
So that was a big one. And then it was, so name everything and systemize it. We're still just working with moves. Brandon came in on the backside of that, and it was like, there's concepts and principles. We need to do that. So did a bunch of other people at the same time.
Totally.
There's another layer to that, beyond that. And that's where we are in the modern jiu-jitsu scene. And I feel like almost no one's caught on to it. John has, for sure. And that's that what you take the raw, like, movements, right? You say, like, all right, principles are constant. Concepts are manipulations of principles. They're not the same thing.
Nope.
In jiu-jitsu, the way that you reconcile theory and physical application is relatively simple. Whoever has the best application in the moment wins. That's why guys, like, people talk about Lucas Barbosa and they're like, oh, this guy's not like a super intelligent, like, whatever kind of guy. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. I met him a few times, seems like a nice guy. Never given him an IQ quiz, have no clue. But I can tell you that when he wins his matches, it's because he has the best application. Whether that means he thought about it or he drilled it 10,000 times or someone else showed it to him, didn't matter. That's how he won. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So what we do is we go back and we take principle and concept and we start there, and then we develop the best application for the situation that you're trying to solve, essentially the problem, right? Mm-hmm. And whoever has that has the best jiu-jitsu in the moment. Correct. You know what I mean? And so that's the way that modern jiu-jitsu is. So we have layers. We have principle, concept, then we have moves, and then we have refined application, which is going to be both things put together. Yeah. Right? And so, like, when you look at training modalities and the way that you develop your jiu-jitsu, these are the ways you develop it, Like, you can't just have one or the other. So it's like if someone, like, goes, I just do this fluid jiu-jitsu where I only use theory and I just try to use that theory to govern how I move my body every day, well, you're not going to be very good because you have to constantly think about everything that you're doing. So when you go to compete, there's just too much going on. Yeah. You're not going to be able to pull it off. Yeah,
there's too much information to process at the time.
Right, yeah. And if you memorize a playbook, it's linear, and when that linear system breaks, you lose everything. Right. So any variable throws you.
Correct.
Right? So both guys lose, It's the guy who has refined application built off of concept and principle because that guy already knows where he's trying to go, but he also has the ability to improvise based on, like, the small problems that arise as he goes. This also is exactly how fundamentals of jiu-jitsu work. Correct. Right?
Yes.
This is the thing we were talking about in class when you came by the gym yesterday. We were talking about this. Guys don't care about training fundamentals. They feel like by blue belt they've mastered the fundamentals. They just need to move on and do this crazy whatever stuff, right?
Yep.
And it's like, okay, well, if you don't develop your fundamentals, then you'll have a fundamental problem. The difference, like, a fundamental problem means every time you go to side control, this guy's able to turn away because you don't know how to fundamentally stop him from turning away. So every time you go there, you have a problem.
Right.
Whereas if you know how to stop him from turning away, he only turns away when you end up in this one specific weird scenario.
Right.
Which one's easier to fix? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's way easier to fix that one scenario than it is to fix the 100 scenarios that he's going to create by being able to turn away, because you'd have a fundamental hole in your game.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
So all of those things. So yeah, we had, like, move collection for a long time. Then we had this idea that we shouldn't do any moves and we should only govern our jiu-jitsu by, like, theory, And now we've arrived at this place in jiu-jitsu where people realize that, like, theory and physical application can meet in the middle. Yeah. And when we do that, that's where we find the best jiu-jitsu.
I think our pendulum is swinging constantly, but we're getting closer to the goal.
Yeah. Overcorrection is definitely a thing in jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
It's definitely a thing. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of, so, like, I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask you was about what you're building, because you're building a very strong, not just locally, but a very strong world-class program with your guys, with Ryan and Kevin, and you got some other guys coming up too that people haven't heard of yet. But I guess speak about them a little bit, their progress, how you've developed them, where do you see them going, the program in general, just just for your guys specifically.
Okay. Yeah. So I just have a bunch of guys in my room that want to be professionals. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like they came to me. I don't like seek these guys out or anything. I don't have like some weird Craigslist ad somewhere that's like, hey, if you want to do professional jiu-jitsu, like come by the gym. It's nothing like that. It's like they just came to me, and I wouldn't do half the things that I do if it wasn't for them. I feel like I just owe them. Like they're the reason that I'm not actively competing. So before I moved here, I had like 3 full-time guys that wanted to do jiu-jitsu as a career. And I would just coach them, run the school, and compete. And then when I moved here, I ended up with like 15, 20 guys, you know what I mean, that want to do that. And it's like, okay, so when we're in camp, like if I'm getting ready for something, it's like I got to train all week with these guys super hard. And then on Friday, go get on a plane to go somewhere to coach one of them, while all the ones that aren't competing go home and rest. And then I get off this plane on like Sunday, I'm completely wiped. And then Monday I show up and I'm exhausted. And they're like, all right, you ready to train? You know what I mean? Yep. It's like, no. Not even close, dude. I haven't even recovered at all, you know? And so it's like that thing became very real. So they came to me, you know? But those guys want careers in jiu-jitsu, competitive careers. Some of those guys want to be the best guys in the world. Mm-hmm. And so if they trust me enough to come there and do it full time and tailor their lives around the training schedule and stuff, then I feel like I just owe it to them to try and help them reach that goal. It wouldn't be very genuine of me if I was just like, well, boys, good luck. No. Maybe you should move to Austin.
Right.
You know what I mean? They don't want to.
All right.
You know, and it's like, someone's got to provide that for these guys. And so that's my take on it. So Ryan showed up. He'd been doing jiu-jitsu like 8-9 years. He's doing a bunch of IBJJF. He's doing a bunch of stuff like that, which is cool, but he wasn't getting anywhere with it. And he wasn't making any money. That was the most important thing, is he was having to do a bunch of weird jobs so he could train full time. And I was like, all right, man, well, you probably need to do tournaments that pay you first and foremost, because what's the point? You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you want in the end of all this? And then if that's what you're going to do and you want to have like a name in the sport, well, then you need to go and do events where the spotlight's on you. So the conversation we had was pretty simple. It's like, if you're doing IBJJFs, that's dope. But unless you're winning black belt adult, probably in the gi, there's no fame to be had there. Like, you're just one guy on a mat with like 12 other mats going at the exact same time. No one's watching your match unless they know who you are.
Right.
You know? Whereas if you go to even a small invitational where there's only one match at a time, everyone watches your match.
Yeah, all the eyes are on you.
Right. So I was like, this is it. This is the move if you want that. And he's like, all right, cool. So he did like some local kind of small pro shows. Like he did Zapatero and like Southeastern Submission Classic, things like that, just to learn the rule set and get a vibe. And also because when he came to me, he had 0 leg locks. Like he was getting leg locked by white belts in the room that were like 70 pounds lighter than him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm like, brother, you can't go into this world. You know what I'm saying? Like this. You have to catch up a little bit. So he did, and he did a fantastic job. He learns very quickly. Ryan's like a machine. You can just download the jiu-jitsu straight to him and he goes.
Like the Matrix.
It really is like that. He's very like smart, and he's very like coordinated in that way. So anyway, he did that, and then he was like, I want to do combat jiu-jitsu. And so I was like, well, you'll have to go to Eddie's, you'll have to qualify for it, you know? And he was like, great, no problem. So he goes, submits everyone in the qualifier. You're going to combat jiu-jitsu, bro. Like, cool. And one thing about the jiu-jitsu that we do is like a very heavy focus on keeping our opponents off balance all the time. So it's always like hands are posting on the mat, they're doing things.
Yeah. I noticed that about your guys, by the way. Whenever I train with those guys, one thing they do consistently is whenever I'm on top with any of their guys, I mean, I would say a hand is on the mat or my butt's on the mat consistently. I'm constantly getting Kazushi left, right. And it's just, it makes it much more difficult for the guard passer. Like I have no limbs to actually like pin, I have to work a lot harder. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So like one of the things with Ryan was I was like, dude, if you do jiu-jitsu this way, you don't have to worry about getting hit. And then beyond that, even I was like, I don't want you to like throw any strikes at CJJ at all. Like, I don't want to risk you like breaking your hand. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, cause you can, like, there's a high risk of breaking your hand if you're like a strong big guy and you're throwing those kinds of strikes, right? Like you have to train that. And I was like, we're not going to do that because you're already playing catch up. You know, you already haven't been in this world for very long. Don't throw strikes. I'm just not confident you won't hurt yourself, you know?
Right.
And he's like, all right, great. So he goes and he submits everyone. He wins the first combat jiu-jitsu world title, no strikes thrown. which is crazy. And I was like, dope, dude, you did it. That was really awesome. Like, you get like 10 G's, you get the belt, the promotion, it's on Fight Pass. You know, he got all the cool stuff.
Right.
And I think that was it, dude. I think when he won that was it. He was just like, all right, cool. Like, this is it. You know what I mean? And he's been on that pro jiu-jitsu route. And, I mean, that dude has just been a juggernaut in the pro jiu-jitsu scene. Like, he's just, like, winning everything. Like, most recently, he won that EBI Absolute. He's one of 3 guys that have ever won it. The other 2 are Gordon and Nicky Rod. Like, they're the only ones that have ever won that tournament, you know?
Yeah, that's impressive.
You know? He fought 2 guys that were 100 pounds bigger than him and submitted them both. You know what I mean? It's like, you're like, okay, you're Ryan Aitkin, and there's a guy 100 pounds bigger than you, first and foremost. Like, okay, you know? Right. And then also he beats them. So it's like, all right. So he's doing that thing, you know? Got his invite to ADCC, beats the number 2 seed in the whole bracket in the first round in like a minute, you know what I mean?
The biggest upset of the tournament.
Bro, he's just, you know, and so it's really like, I mean, obviously I'm like trying to be a coach for him and help him and do all the things, but also you're talking about someone who's that dedicated to what they're doing. You know what I mean? So it's really a lot of him. These guys like Kevin Beering would be a completely opposite story. Kevin Beering walked into the gym at 18, never heard of jiu-jitsu before, tries it out. First class, catches a cramp and literally cries on the side of the mat. I walked over to him, bro. I was like, I don't know that this is for you, big dog, you know? Like, you caught a leg cramp and you're in tears right now? Like, this kid's, you know what I mean? I was like, this is a rough sport, brother. Like, this ain't it. And kind of was just like, all right, man, never expected to see him again. You know what I mean? And then he came back, and he kept coming back, and he kept coming back. And then he competed a couple times, and like right off the rip, bro, like right off the rip competing, he's just like destroying people. And I was like, okay, man, like it's kind of crazy. You know what I mean? He's just one of those kids. And then I think like maybe about 6 months a year, and he was like, I'm going to do jiu-jitsu full time. Like I want to do jiu-jitsu. Like that's my thing, you know?
Yeah.
And his family is one of the most supportive families I've ever seen in my life. Like his dad loves it. His mom loves it. Like his dad was like, I don't know if Kevin will ever move out. You know, type, you know, like vibe. And I was like, bro, that's wild, man. I feel like most people's parents would be like, you need to go to college. Like, you need to figure your life out. Right. And his dad's at every tournament, dude. His dad flies everywhere we go. In December, he's in EBI. We have to go to Cancun. His dad's flying to Cancun with us to, like, go to the tournament, you know?
That's dope.
It's so cool. And, like, his dad is just super dope. So that's Kevin. But when you get a kid like that, he's athletic, he's coordinated, he's really smart, and he's super dedicated. That's it. He just trains full time. That's it. It's why he's 4 years in and he's going to EBI, you know?
Right.
It's how he has wins over top 10 guys in his weight, like, already, you know, because he's just that dedicated. So, like, from the outside looking in, it may look like this grand construct, but in reality, I just had a bunch of, like, awesome people walk in. Yeah. And they just believed in what I was doing, and you know, I believe in them, so that's just how it all works. You know what I'm saying?
It is interesting. I do appreciate you really mentioning that that you're putting a lot of onus on the athlete of like, do you want this or not? You know, I feel like a lot of times people look at the coach to like create this magic thing for the athlete. It's like, well, if they're not willing to put in the work and, you know, do a lot of training and do all the auxiliary work and actually trust their coach. I mean, there's only so much that you or me or someone else can possibly do, but you have to have that dedicated athlete. And I think that's sometimes going through the process, like, of, you know, a bunch of different students, you know, some say, you know, some will be like, yeah, I want to do that. And then maybe a year and like, oh, that's too tough. That's okay. Yeah. Or the opposite. You never expect, like, oh, this person seems like they don't care, but then a year in, they're like, yo, I want to take this seriously, and they do. So I think understanding the athlete is actually, you know, important, and I think that's something me and you've been discussing a bunch, kind of like off camera about, like, you know, assessing the right students, right? So, like, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I let them tell me, man, like, what are your goals? What do you want? You know what I mean? And, like, honestly, like, for, you know, the Ryans and the Kevins, and I have a bunch more of guys that are right behind them.
For sure.
That don't have the experience. So one of the things that, like, I noticed right away is, like how much are they willing to compete? And so I have a bunch of guys that want to be coaches. So they've competed. They're very good. They're all doing the same jiu-jitsu. It's not like, you know, Kevin and Ryan get the secret sauce and then I teach the rest of them, whatever.
For sure.
you know, so then it's like I have this purple belt Luke that is wants to be an instructor. He teaches some of the beginners classes at my gym. He also teaches classes at another gym. And it's like everything that I do is to push him to be a better coach. And he competes so that he can be a better coach. You know, it's hard to be a good coach and not compete. You know what I mean? Haven't ever competed, you know? Right. John Danaher is like an example that people give, but it's an example. It's kind of an outlier scenario, sure, you know? For sure. It's very difficult to understand what your athletes are going through. And even like John will say things that sound very outlandish to someone who has competed, like he doesn't believe in sports psychology. And it's like, well, you didn't compete, bro. So you may not understand, you know what I mean? Right. So there's things like that. But my thing is just simply like, when they come in, what do you want? And I mean that. What do you want? Because if you don't want to be a competitor, don't compete.
Correct.
I just had one of our girls come to me. She competed over the weekend. She's told me for the last year that she doesn't really want to compete, and she just keeps doing it. And I keep, every time she tells me she's going to compete, I'm like, why? Like, I thought you said you didn't want to do that. And she came to me and she's like, I need to talk to you. And it was this whole, like, it had a lot of energy, you know? And I was just like, okay, sure. Yeah. What's up? And I felt like I already knew what she was gonna say because she said it before, you know. But this time she was like, "I really mean it this time. I think I'm done competing." And she was like, "I still want to train here." And I was like, "Bro, like, finally," you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm actually pumped that you're not gonna compete anymore because you keep saying you don't want to compete, and then you compete, and then you don't look like you're having a good time. You should stop doing that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's just a tiny little part of jiu-jitsu. It has nothing to do with the rest of it. You know, just have fun. Just do jiu-jitsu and have a good time, bro. Like. You know, and like it's like those types of scenarios. The worst is when you get the guys that won't tell you what they want. You know, so they say that, oh, every student's going to tell you they want to be a world champion, and only like 2 of them want to be world champions for real. It's a high price, you know. Yeah, you can't do that. The other thing that sucks is when people come to you and they think that there's secret sauce, like you said. There's no magic there. Like, I can't just make you this thing. You have to do it. Yep. And so guys will see that track record and they go, oh, I'll go train with Sean and then I'll become Ryan. And it's like, nah, dog, like you should spend an afternoon with him and see how much like him you really are. You know what I mean? Like, it's not about me, it's about you. And like, I can't just make you. I'm sure John and all those guys deal with exactly the same thing. Guys go to New Wave and they're like, I'll be the next Gordon. And it's like, probably not, bro. Like, not unless you're willing to sacrifice what Gordon sacrificed and do all the things that Gordon did. It's the same thing with Ryan and them. Unless you're going to do, like Kevin gets up in the morning, comes to train, trains, stays way late. I mean, you've seen. I got to drag him out of that place.
He basically lives at the gym.
Yeah, goes home, eats, sleep, come back, train again, go home, eat, sleep, and the next day do the same thing. Yeah, so that's all he does.
Yeah, and that's so, like, even today on our Instagram channel, I posted something, and I was actually going to ask you about that. I talked to a few people that I know at specific academies, like some of the high level ones. And I was like, how many hours are you putting in a day on the mats? Like, just total, not just rolling, but just how often are you on the mat? And, you know, I hear like, oh, you know, I do this class and then this class and I do a little extra here, and I don't know, like 4 or 5 hours, and that's pretty consistent from like almost everyone. I'm like, wow, all these high level places are like the guys who really want to be something special. They're putting in. They're not just there once a day. They're not. They're not there like for that hour class and they go everyone home. They're not. They're putting in much, much more than that. They're staying later, asking questions, getting extra rounds, drilling a little bit more after class, practicing beforehand, before class starts, even asking their coaches and teammates other questions. Like they're so invested that their mat time is essentially a second job. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that, you know, if you want to be a high level guy, and if you think that just because you do your class at 6 o'clock and then go home and then just watch TV the rest of the night, like you're not even doing bare minimum, in my opinion. Like, you need to do that, like what like these guys are doing, just to be in the conversation. Doesn't mean you're going to win. Like, you could do all that and still like lose, but you have to do all of that just to be in the conversation. And I think that's an important thing for some people to understand, of like what you have to sacrifice to be there. And like, you know, to Sean's credit, like he has a couple guys that are willing to do that. And I think that that's one of the reasons why his guys are having the success that they are.
Yeah. And because they want to do the work, right? Yeah. Exactly. And it sucks, like, explaining that stuff to people sometimes. Like, oh, you came here and you thought that you were going to be a high level professional because you walked in and you trained here. And you're not, though. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're just not doing the things you need to do. And it's like, I'm not the kind of guy that's like going to tell you all those things. I'm not going to like ride you in training. Like, if I notice that you're just like kind of talking during your drills and stuff and not paying attention, that's fine. I'm not going to go over there and be like, yo, like, you need to focus up. I just don't do that. I'm just gonna let you show me how much you want to do the thing, because you can be in the room and train and not be that thing. And
Right.
and like, we have a ton of hobbyists that train at the school. We got a bunch of I feel like we have a crazy room with like the black belts that are like over 40. Like we have
Oh
like,
yeah, that's one of the reasons why sometimes I train at his gym is because there are a bunch of guys my age that are fantastic, amazing training partners.
Yeah.
Whether it's like Stu, and then it's like Chris I get to roll with. And there's a couple other guys I'm definitely missing. So it's just like he's got an incredible room of guys that are just around my age that are great training partners. Just give fantastic rounds and are super technical and fun to roll with.
yeah, man, you could come in the morning and it's like 5, 6, 7 different school owners all trained together in the same room. And it's like, yeah, because like anyone can come there and do the thing that they want to do there. Like, oh, you just want to be here to get better at jiu-jitsu. Cool. You want to come here and hang out. Cool. You can do whatever you want here. There's no like thing where it's like, oh, I train at 10th Planet Atlanta, so I have to compete. I have to do these things. You don't. And so it's unfortunate, sometimes when people come there and they have this expectation for what's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
But the thing is it's like, dude, if you show up at a new place and do the same things that you did at the old place, you're probably going to get the same results you got at the old place, unless you are doing the most at the old place. You know what I'm saying? And everything down to our schedule is tailored for the guys who train full time. Nothing in there is designed for anyone except those guys. And so that's it. Everything is set up for you. It's a push button and go. How hard do you want to work?
Yeah, it's all structured out.
That's it. Like our schedule is set up to prevent overtraining. Our schedule is set up to allow for the maximum amount of drilling and maximum amount of rolling. Like everything there is set up for that. You know what I'm saying? And it's just up to you. Like, I've done everything I can do to make this work for you. All you have to do is show up and put the work in, which is what Kevin and Ryan and these guys, David, I mean, there's so many guys, it's what they do every week.
For sure.
You'll see the same face every time you're in there. Yep. These guys, every time I walk in here, these guys are here.
Yeah, you see the same like, dozen guys all the time. And it's like, those are guys that are, they're doing well. Yeah, I can say the same thing about like some of our guys. Like for example, like tonight was Halloween, right? And some people are out doing a bunch of other stuff. And I can tell you right now that there are 6 people at my academy that were in there tonight that could have been out doing a bunch of other things, but they were in there getting their rounds in. And I'll tell you right now, those 6 guys are the guys that are doing very, very well.
Yep.
Like, regardless of whether they're competitive or not, every round I watch, I'm like, oh, you're doing well. So, sometimes the answer is easy. It's like, who's putting in the work, right? I think we go look at all these variables, but then break it down to work output. Like, what work output are you putting in?
And the competing too. Like, Kevin started around the same time as maybe 4 or 5 other guys that are all full-time guys, and he got a lot better than them in a short amount of time. And like, they've talked to me about it, like, oh, dude, what's Kevin doing differently? And it's like, the one thing he's doing differently from the rest of you is, for the first 2 years, he competed like every month, sometimes multiple times a month. And it was like, he developed that competitive skill set that you can't develop in the room.
Right.
He developed that like at such a fast pace.
Yeah.
Because these guys would only compete once every 2 months, once every 3 months.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's something that me and Brandon have been talking to our guys recently about. So we've had this so we had a really strong 2023. We had a pretty good 2024. Towards the tail end, we started tailing off in some of our matches a little bit, in some of our events. We're still doing well, but just not as well as before then. And then I noticed the guys who weren't, they weren't as active. And so like, they were like competing maybe once a quarter, every like 3 months or every 4 months, something like that. And so one of the things that we told our guys recently is like, to get better, to get competitively better, be active. Don't worry about wins and losses at this early belt rank. Volume. Get in there, do a bunch. Do Naga, do New Breed, go to Carolina, do super fights. Do anything you can get your hands on. Whether, different rule sets, whatever. Like, try to get exposure as much and download as much information as you possibly can, so that, when in a year or two, you're like, man, yeah, I've had 100 matches in the last like 24 months. Like, that's incredible data for you to have. Now you're like, you don't worry about, it's an IBJJF tournament where I can't heel hook. Okay, cool. Can I wrestle up and still body lock block pass. Great, cool, you can. Or you know what I mean? Or it's like, hey, now this tournament allows heel hooks. Great, so I can just pull guard. Or this tournament where there's no point, there is no points. Okay, cool. Then I can attack off my back viciously and get to like EBIOT. But like, you know what I mean? Like you have all those different scenarios that you've worked through because you've had so much experience in that, and that's something that I think the good competitors, the more they compete, the better they get.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And you'll notice it with the best guys that's what they do. They're at every tournament, you know. Mm-hmm. And but yeah, so that's really the deal over there, dude. Like it's like if those guys all quit competing tomorrow, and I didn't get anyone else that wanted to do it full time, then I wouldn't be building that. You know what I mean? We would just be doing jiu-jitsu together and hanging out and doing what, you know what I mean? Like I never really set out and was just like, I need a room full of full-time guys. I don't recruit. I actually actively try to get guys not to switch gyms. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because I find number one, the guys who start there are almost always better than the guys that don't. And that's because like the guys that come from other places end up bringing this, like they have a different culture, they have a different attitude. They do way different jiu-jitsu sometimes. So it's almost like they're like, hey, man, how, like, you know, the white belt comes in, he gets armbarred a bunch of times. He goes, coach, how do I not get armbarred? And you're like, dude, the problem's so much deeper than that armbar. You know what I mean? And they come in, they're like, dude.
It's not an armbar that's the problem.
And it's like, I know for sure if you come in and the first thing out of your mouth is, dude, how do I not get leg locked by these guys? It's like, oh, no, dude. Because I'm going to show you how to not get leg locked by them. It's going to take you 6 months. None of them are going to leg lock you anymore. And then you're going to go, dude, how do I stop them from taking my back every roll? Okay, well, that's because you're defending the leg lock now. So now you have to do this. And it's just like, well, how do I stop them from going to the front headlock and like choking me there? And it's like, dude, like the game, you have to relearn everything now. You know what I'm saying? And it's not always the case, but 9 times out of 10, that is the case. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you start going after everybody else's students and you start bringing in that culture. And like, another thing is like when guys come in, sometimes it's good. Sometimes people legit just come in because they moved or they like the vibe more and it's cool, it's chill. But sometimes they come in because they had problems at the last place. And it's just like, dude, like, don't bring that here, please. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't need that thing either, you know? And so, like, again, like I said, tomorrow, like, my school could be a hobbyist school tomorrow. If those were the people in the room, those are the people that I would be teaching jiu-jitsu to, you know what I mean? But because my guys want all this stuff, they want to compete and stuff, it's like, all right, cool. It's why I go to all their tournaments and stuff. I'm leaving on Monday to go to the PGF. I'm not even one of the coaches at the PGF, but Ryan and Elijah are like, look, we need you to just come and be there with us and coach us anyway. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, fine, whatever. That's what you want, you know? So that's what we're going to do.
So I did want to ask you about Atlanta Jiu-Jitsu a little bit, like where's it been, where is it going? As like a thought, you know, like from many years ago. I mean, I know you're not from Atlanta, but just as a thought, where it is, where it was, where it is, and what do you see the future of Atlanta Jiu-Jitsu?
I don't know, man. That's a tough one. I feel like Atlanta Jiu-Jitsu has always been very competitively driven. I feel like when I started jiu-jitsu, that's when like Ian McPherson and those guys were on top. Like Alliance was killing it in the IBJJF and stuff. And that's when the IBJJF was also on top, when IBJJF was the biggest thing we had to compete in. So that was pretty cool. And then I would come here to compete, and that was definitely interesting. There was a different landscape when I got here. Those guys were all kind of going out, and there was another wave of guys coming in. And then I moved here, and it feels like another big wave, you know what I mean? It feels like a lot of there's this new sort of wave of jiu-jitsu, and you have these young black belts, you know, you got like Alex Enriquez and Ryan, and all these people who did grow up here, who are going to open schools here, and that jiu-jitsu atmosphere is probably going to shift pretty dramatically when those people open schools, because they're not going to, you know, they're going to have a different mindset, you know. These are active competitors, compete at the highest level of the sport, and they're bringing that, you know, that modern kind of culture. So as far as like where it was in a great place, honestly, competitively. I couldn't speak to the culture because I didn't live here. Where it's at now is I feel like a transitionary phase where some of the older guys are still around and the way they do things is still happening. And then the younger people are coming in and they're kind of changing some things. And then I think in the future, I don't know, it seems like interesting, to see if Ryan and Alex and people like that stick around. You're going to have a lot of world-class people running gyms. Owen Jones is moving here, or at least, that's the story anyway right now. And he's obviously a world-class guy, and maybe more people will see the potential and they'll move here, and this place will expand, and it'll be cool, man. And
yeah, I mean, somebody told me on his social media that one of the reasons why he picked this place was because it's been popping.
Oh, okay. Well, cool.
That was his thing. He's like, well, like it seems like Atlanta Jiu-Jitsu is a thing, so it's one of the reasons why he wanted to come here to be like, yo, I'm gonna be part of that. So that's someone told me. I have no verification. That's something they told me. If that's true, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I feel like the more of that we can get here, the better.
I agree.
There's a bit of a scarcity mindset, it feels like, here. There's still some like no cross training kind of schools and some stuff like that. And this place has always had a ton of drama, obviously. But I think like as the future, draws in, we can kind of get rid of a lot of that stuff, and we don't really need it, I feel like 10th Planet in Atlanta wouldn't have been a thing 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? I feel like the old school mindset, they would have been like 10th Planet would have been, a no-go.
Do you think you guys hit this place at the right time?
I don't know. Maybe. Maybe. I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so, dude.
You could turn around 5 years from now, and then you got a ADCC champion, EBI. You already got EBI. You know what I mean? So it's like, you never know.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you guys are headed in that direction, so.
I just think, dude, the real reality is people just need to realize that, like, there's enough room for everybody.
Yeah.
Like, and as long as you just do your thing and you're authentic, then you don't have anything to worry about. Like, dude, someone could open up across the street from me, dude. I don't care, because you're not going to be doing what I'm doing.
Right.
You know how rare it would be for someone to actually open up near me and do exactly what I'm doing? Like, oh, you're doing only no-gi. You're doing this thing specifically. You know what I mean? Like, no. You're not going to do
a carbon
that.
Copy of you, essentially.
Yeah, you can't.
That's really hard.
You can't do it. And I think the more of these people will like realize that about themselves, that you bring something unique to the table, then that culture will shift, and everyone will realize there's room for everybody. You know what I mean? 100%. And we can have a huge community that works together, and it's really awesome. But that thing has to change. You know what I mean? And I think this whole like who's the best in Atlanta thing is a little goofy. You know what I mean? Credentially, we can always figure out who the best is. It's not a big deal. You know what I'm saying? And I think like how much better are we when everyone's doing good things and we're all just saying this is all what we're all doing together, than when we say like, all right, well, I did this and you did that, so I'm better than you type vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the more we try to bring each other up rather than try to, play this like checklist against each other, the better we're actually going to get.
I'm saying. And it's just like, dude, like this article from ADCC this past year where it was like Atlanta Jiu-Jitsu at ADCC. It's like a whole article they did. And it's like, dude, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But none of those people train together. None of those people that went to ADCC train together. Not one of them. You know what I mean? And it's just like, come on. You know what I mean? Like, what's the deal? You know?
Yeah.
And so that when that changes, and nowhere's like that. Nowhere's like that. Like if you go to San Diego and you go, all right, this guy's going to ADCC, this guy's going, this guy's going, this guy's going. Those people don't all train together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if we can do it, maybe we're the first to do it.
I would love that. That's sometimes people ask me like, hey Greg, what are your goals like for jiu-jitsu down here, is to build a culture where that is something that is common, that it's not frowned upon, that I hate saying it, but almost like enforced. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, like you should be, you should be having friends from other places and having good community there, and not just feeling like, oh, like they're the, like I sometimes I say to them, I remember I said something to someone a while back about, I go, Greg, who's your biggest competitor? And it's like, well, it's not other jiu-jitsu guys. It's lacrosse.
Yeah, I mean, that's 100% true. We don't, like, jiu-jitsu is already small enough. You know what I mean? The tribalism's a bit wild. But I don't know, man. I don't know what Atlanta's future looks like. Like, it's coming out of a pretty bad place, I feel like, culturally. I feel like we had a pretty rough culture here. When I moved here, it was like dudes instantly have problems with you just because you live in the area. They're like, that guy's here. Oh, that guy. You know what I mean?
Yo,
And it's
I know exactly what that feels like.
and it's like, okay, I feel like you're gonna get that in a lot of places, but here for sure. And I feel like I said, as we move forward, it's got to change. I mean, I'm pretty bad, honestly, because I live in Kennesaw, which is like very north of the city, and I just like live in my little bubble and don't leave often.
Right.
It makes it really easy to like be happy and do all the things you want to do and ignore any kind of weird dramatic nonsense. And
whereas like I'm in the kind of the mecca of it.
yeah, dude, you're like knee deep in it, dog. You
like looking outside, I'm like, close the blind.
yeah, dude. Yes. And it's like, that stuff is whack. That's the part of jiu-jitsu that I just don't really subscribe too much. You know what I mean? I don't really care what people think and have to say and stuff like that. Cause, I could give an example. Like we're doing this PGF coming up, right? And the PGF is a show. It's a show. That's the thing Brandon talks about. He's like, ADCC is the Olympics. PGF is the NBA. You know what I mean? Like it's a show. It's not to find out who the best is. He's like, if we wanted to give money to the best jiu-jitsu guy, we'll just send Gordon a check. Like we don't need to figure that out. We already know.
Right.
So this is a show. This is for fun.
I like that line. Actually, it's funny.
Yeah. So he's like, we're here. Like he wants the guys to yap. He wants them to talk a little trash and get a little crazy and maybe even play a character. Like Elijah plays an actual character when he's at the PGF, which is insanity. But it's funny. He's funny. So at least I think he is. I think he gets under some people's skin, which is the point. But they talk.
He plays the heel well.
I hate that talking, dude. Like when the PGF, when we do it, I just don't watch any of that stuff. Like, cause to me, it's like I'll listen to these guys talk and they just say such crazy stuff, and I'm like, dude, you have to grapple. You remember that part, right? Like you said, like they're like, dude, I'm gonna this guy up and do all this, and it's like you remember you have to actually like grapple with him like next week, maybe on like Tuesday or Wednesday. You got to put your hands on him, and he's gonna do that thing that he does to you every time you grapple with him. You know what I mean? Right. And so like I just like spend so much time trying to tune that stuff out that even when it comes around and it's almost in jest like that, I'm almost still just like, oh, here that's that thing again. You know what I mean? Like that yappy, ego-driven kind of talk. I hate it. So I don't know if Atlanta can get rid of that stuff and it can just like we can get to a place where people genuinely want to help each other and focus and build something unique here. Then I think that Atlanta will explode and it'll be one of the meccas. But if that doesn't happen and it stays this exclusive, like us versus them mentality here, where the biggest rivals you have are 5 minutes up the street from you, then people will never escape the small town mentality, and you won't have ADCC champions coming out of Atlanta.
Yeah,
you know?
I think the one thing Atlanta has is it has a number of coaches, like you or myself or Brandon or Bruno Fasado and others that have a very healthy study, get better, truly care about the art point of view, and are very invested in that is the most important ingredient. Because as long as that's there, that is the core of this. Everything else can kind of be built off of that. But if that wasn't there, then you don't have a foundation anymore of like, you know what I mean? So that makes me very excited, is that without that foundation there of coaches, I don't think you're going to get it. So I'm a little optimistic, and I always like to play optimistic card, but I think in a couple of years, I think people are going to look at jiu-jitsu in Atlanta and say, okay, I could go to Austin, Texas, but I can also go to Atlanta.
Yeah, and that's the goal, man. I got these guys in my face every week that want to do this full time. And it's like, all right, do you want to do it here? You want to do it there? Well, they don't want to go there, so it's like, all right, well, we got to figure out how to do it here. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, I also don't like. I'm about Atlanta Jiu-Jitsu being good and like blowing it up and doing it as a unit. But also at the end of the day, it's like, bro, like if you guys don't want to be a part of it, that's fine. You know what I mean? I also don't care. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
I owe everything to my guys and nothing to anyone else. You know?
As you should.
Like, there's just no time for it. So, it's like no matter what happens in the community, this guy's mad at this guy's doing this guy's doing that. No matter what happens on Monday, I still have to go into my gym and have all these guys in my face asking me how they can get better. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So yeah, they'll figure it out if they want. And honestly, I'm super optimistic. I hope it works out, but also at the same time, bro, whatever.
Yeah, facts. One question I do have for you: do you, as a fun question, will we ever see any of your guys in a gi?
Dude, you know what? They make bets all the time. And people lose them and have to compete in the gi. And it's funny. it's funny. Steven lost a bet once and had to compete in the gi and went to some local tournament and just murdered everyone.
That's
and
awesome.
it was insane, and it almost like took the value out of it. And when they were talking about that Atlanta submission series thing in the gi, like there was a couple of them that were like, dude.
Yo, I there is maybe I don't know how much time we have left, but like I do have this theory that gi and no gi, just when you kind of look at it, there are 1,000% differences, but the body works like the body works.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
like
yeah.
you can just, if you think about it, like a side smash pass or a leg drag, like, okay, like it's functional, the same gi and no gi. The difference is slip and grip. If I can grab a collar and a pant, well, I can do the same leg drag, I can, it's much harder to get out of it. So yeah, that'd be fun. I mean, I think I have a hot take. I think your guys training with them enough are so fundamentally structured sound. You could put a gi on them, I don't think it'd be a problem.
Sometimes they do well in the gi. And also you got like Muhammad and Ryan and stuff who spent real time in the
That's
gi.
true.
And it's kind of like cheating, you know what
That's
I'm saying?
true.
They're like the 10th Planet guys.
Yeah.
It's funny to see guys online saying stuff to them. They'll say crazy stuff like, oh yeah, these 10th Planet guys, man, what do they know
No,
about the gi?
Muhammad's really good in the gi.
And it's like they're both actually really good at the
Yeah,
gi.
like Muhammad and Ryan. Like Ryan is really good in the gi. Muhammad, I've trained with him in the gi. He's really good. He's actually a fun. I'm gonna ask him to come by and train some more gi with me. But he's fun. But yeah, so that's kind of cool. Any closing thoughts? Any stuff you want to ask or talk about?
Nothing, man. Just thank you guys for having me on. It's just dope, dude. This is a really good time, like good vibe, and I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, of course. We're definitely gonna have more episodes like this. He's an awesome guest. So thank you so much, Sean. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
You're welcome.